December is here, and we've got a lot to talk about. Duke football currently going through a head coaching search, and let's talk about the start to the season for the Duke men's basketball team. Can the Blue Devils bounce back from their loss earlier in the week against Arkansas when they take on Georgia Tech this weekend? All of that and more right here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and so good to have you here with us on Friday, December 1st, 2023. Excited to talk about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. That's what we do each and every day here on Locked On Blue Devils. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. We have 5-Star Friday shout-outs that we'll bring back in the coming weeks. So if you want to be shout-out on this program, leave us a 5-star rating and written review, and we'll be sure to do that for you. Also, follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Watch the show each and every day. Hit the like video. Share the videos with your friends. Again, your support just means so much to us. Today, we got to talk about this men's basketball program. A 5-2 start so far for Duke, coming off their loss to Arkansas, and then a little bit later in the show, we'll be able to talk about Mike Elko heading to Texas A&M. Who's the next head coach for the Duke football team? A lot to discuss, and who better to have on the program to join me here today than my good pal, Conor O'Neill, our friend from Devils Illustrated, who joins us here on the program. Conor, the month of December has arrived. 1 month left to go here in the calendar year 2023, and we have no shortage of things to be talking about here in the life of Duke athletics, right?
Yeah, I was just saying, I feel like it's the mound visit in Bull Durham right now, and we've got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know how much can be solved by giving somebody candlesticks for a wedding gift. So it's a lot. It's the calendar of what college football has become with the early signing period and the transfer portal opening. Those windows, I know they were designed to kind of help student athletes, but they're it ramps up, man. It goes quick. Like you're trying to prepare for a bowl. It's wild. So there's a lot of bullets in the air right now.
Yeah, and not even mentioning the Duke basketball team, which is
it's basketball season too.
This program that so many people absolutely love watching. We got to see the ACC and SEC challenge this week play out, a 7-7 tie between the two conferences. Pretty fun there. But Duke plays Arkansas. Your big takeaways from that game. What stood out to you?
So I watched the Arizona game in person and said that this was the one bullet you could fire of this is why Duke went so hard after Caden Shedrick, Ernest Uday, some others that didn't end up entering the transfer portal. This team needs a rim protecting 5. And I said you would get one game to say that, and then you've got to move on. You've got to put it in the past. It's over. It happened. It's the summer. The summer doesn't matter when it's November and December. And then I watch them play Arkansas, and it's like, oh, this is another reminder of why this team needs a rim protecting 5. They're not going to have some trade deadline acquisition. They're not going to pick somebody up in the going into ACC play. Like,
can you imagine?
I mean, who knows where college sports is headed? I don't want to be doom and gloom, but maybe that happens 20 years from now. But it's certainly not going to be implemented this year. But no, it's a roster that is extremely talented. They have one glaring hole, and when you pair a lack of rim protection and people being able to parade to get into your paint and score at your basket with the fact that you had 10 shots blocked, you shot, I think it was 17 for 35 on layups against Arkansas, that's going to make it really hard to win. when you can't score close to the other team's basket and when they can score at your basket, like it boils down to fundamental basketball that you understand when you're like 8 years old. The team that can get closer and shoot at your basket and then keep you from shooting close to theirs is usually going to be the team that wins. And so, yeah, it was a 5-point win. You can look at like, okay, if Duke shoots a little bit better on free throws and makes 2 more layups, then they win the game. I also think there's something to be said for the only reason it was a 5-point game at the end was because Arkansas looked like it had never seen a press break before and threw the ball away a bunch and missed some free throws down the stretch. Like that was a 10 to 12 point game, if not for all the shenanigans in the last minute or two. So it's troubling for Duke. It's not something that is like, oh my God, sound the alarm bells are going to be on the bubble this year. I do think that there are fixes that can happen, but it's kind of disconcerting at this point, the way they've lost the 2 games that they have.
And we'll see how they bounce back. Tomorrow they open up ACC play against Georgia Tech, and then a couple of more non-conference games set to be played inside Cameron Indoor. Of course, one game against Baylor towards the end of this month at Madison Square Garden. So, 7 games into the season, a lot left to play, and a lot could change. This team could come together cohesively, and who knows what it ends up being. But, right now, today, you certainly mentioned the lack of size on the interior for this Duke team. How concerned should Duke basketball fans be right now?
Yeah, it's tough, man. Like I said, it's still one of the most talented rosters in the country. It's still when the guards play up to their potential, when even just like 2 of the 4 main guards play up to their potential, it's arguably the best backcourt in the country, right? You're still going to have Kyle Filipowski in the middle who's able to score against just about anybody in the country. It's so tough to talk about because they're so good in every facet except for these, like, rim protection is where I go. I don't think it's going to be a struggle for them to score inside against everybody the way it was against Arkansas. I think that is solvable. It's just the interior defense, and I don't know if the solution is zone. I always think zone is the last resort. I have a running Twitter joke that zone is for cowards, and I say that facetiously. Like, I do think there's a place to play zone as a change of pace option. I don't think this team goes, what Duke team was it? Was it the Marvin Bagley team that played predominantly zone? It wound up being. I don't think that's what this team has to do. I think they have the pieces to match up. I think it's just figuring out who fits where. He's figuring out if Sean Stewart can handle a larger role and play the 5. It's obviously there's not much trust in whether Christian Reeves can do that. If we've seen that through 7 games. Yeah. And you've got to figure out if Kyle Filipowski can do it or if this is the level of defense that he's going to play at center all year, then you've got to adjust. Yeah. The one thing that's kind of been in my mind, and I've tried to figure out a way to phrase it without actually having written it yet, is we all think about last year because of the end of last year and the 10-game winning streak, going into the NCAA tournament as one of the teams peaking at the right time, and the ACC tournament win. Absolutely. Everything about that season was John Shire had to get them to improve throughout the year. Like, they were not that good. They were not as good in November and December and arguably for most of January as they were at the end of the year. And that was an upward trajectory. And I thought that was the best part of what John did with last year's team. And I thought it was why he warranted discussion for ACC Coach of the Year. I think all the panic right now about, is this what we're going to be all year? Because it's already, you've forgotten what happened 12 months ago. Like, you've forgotten, even 9 months ago, you've forgotten the fact that John had that team on an upward trend. It's not going to be easy to do that again, but he's already proven in 1 year and 7 games that he's able to get a team to trend upward throughout a season. And so that's where if you're looking for some reason to be optimistic, some kind of, don't sound the alarm bells quite yet, logic, I think is right there. I think the proof is in the pudding of just last season and the way that team got better throughout the year.
It's just premature at this point to jump to those conclusions right away like that. And to your point, looking at what Duke was able to do against Arkansas, right? We thought that there'd be a little bit of a larger role for Sean Stewart, given some of his play recently. He's only out there for 3 minutes. Ryan Young, only 9 minutes out on the floor for the Duke basketball team. And then there's another player we haven't really touched on yet, but the internet is certainly letting their voice be heard. And that's the play of Mark Mitchell for the Duke basketball team. Just 19 minutes out there on the floor for this Duke team. It's not like he was in foul trouble, as folks that are watching us on YouTube can see the box score. A couple of guys were in foul trouble, and yet a reduced time out there on the floor for Mark Mitchell. What did that tell you about what he could possibly be? Was this just a bad game for Mark Mitchell? Where are you at in all of this?
I think Duke has to figure out a way to see how to phrase this. I think Duke has to figure out an adjustment for teams that sag off of Mark so much, because we saw it against Arizona. I think we saw it against Arkansas. The full disclosures, I only watched the second half of the Arkansas game as I was coming back from covering Florida Wake. Look, they're gonna dare Mark Mitchell to shoot. It's that simple. And until he makes set shots or Duke has a counter to that, it's basically you're playing 4-on-5 on offense until Mark gets within 15 feet of the basket. And that's tough to score even when you have the 4 other guys as talented as they are and as talented as Mark is. If he can't make a set shot and if he can't figure out a viable way to be a productive player, it's going to be tough to run offense with him on the floor. That's something that, look, they're 7 games in. We've seen it by a few teams. Mark can have great games when he's got a mismatch on him offensively, but when teams sag off of him and dare him to shoot, there's got to be a counter to that.
We'll see what kind of counter Duke can make in the games to come on the offensive end of the floor. They open up ACC play this weekend against Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and then the weird month break before we get ACC games here again. I mean, is there anything in particular that jumps out to you about this Georgia Tech team? I talked a little bit about earlier in the week, Damon Stoudemire, first-year head coach, seems to have really brought some energy and life to this Georgia Tech program. But Duke's going to be a tough opponent coming into Atlanta for those Yellow Jackets. What do you think about this matchup this weekend?
One, I think it should be a big game for Kyle Filipowski. The only rotation guy they have that's over 6'7" is Ebenezer Dwana, who, that name sounds familiar. It's because he was at NC State the last couple of years. He's a big-time shot blocker, but he only plays about 25% of their minutes. He's played more recently, but yeah. Everybody else is in the 6'6", 6'7" range that they play. The big one to stop for Duke is going to be Miles Kelly. He's, I think, 7th in the ACC going into this weekend and scoring at 19.4. He really emerged last year in a down year for Georgia Tech as kind of their go-to guy. And then it was a great thing that Damon Stoudemire was able to keep him around through the coaching change. And he's 6'6", 180. He's really wiry. He is a volume shooter in every sense of the word. I think he has the second highest usage rate in the ACC behind Notre Dame freshman. So I'm really looking forward. I think if I look into my crystal ball and I think I know the way that Jay Lucas and John are going to match up their defensive assignments, I think it'll be Tyrese Proctor on Miles Kelly, and that'll be a big matchup. Tyrese is Duke's best on-ball defender, and Miles Kelly is one of the most talented offensive players in the league.
No doubt about that. Excited to see this game play out tomorrow in Atlanta, Duke and Georgia Tech, and we'll have full coverage to talk about next week about this matchup. And then also you'll be able to check out all of Conor's work as well. Let's take a break. We'll kind of pivot and talk about the football program and wrap up our conversation here after this timeout on Locked On Blue Devils today. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book this time of year. And as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers just stay super hot. How about last night's game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks? Did you have that many points being scored coming? Well, FanDuel's got good numbers for you. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. So go ahead, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. All right, we move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils alongside my pal Conor O'Neill. I'm JJ Jackson. I mentioned Devils Illustrated. Tell us a little bit about the website. What all you got going on these days?
It's a lot, as I mentioned at the start. We've got transfer portal entries for Duke football. We've got game coverage and game preview on the basketball side of things. The message board is where you really want to be. That's Devil Insider. It's where I've been dropping news, nuggets, notes about football coach search process, candidates that have interviewed, where Duke is with that. So it's a great time to sign up. Duke.rivals.com at Devils Illustrated, and hope to see you there.
I'm a part of the fun over there at Devils Illustrated, so make sure that you go check out Conor's great work, great coverage of what's going on. But let's kind of break down what's happened this week so far. Crazy kind of 48, 72 hours. Duke won a football game to end the season. Duke finished the year 7-5 with a good win at home over Pitt. And here we are talking about the final days of Mike Elko wearing that Blue Devil blue. So how did we get here? Kind of tell us about kind of those last few hours of Mike Elko from your perspective.
Yeah, I really think, and I've said this on the board in a couple different ways. You can call me naive. You can call me, blinded. I really think everything changed when Mark Stoops had given Texas A&M a yes that turned into a no. That was Saturday night when all that craziness was going down. His Kentucky team had just beaten Louisville, and there was some kind of fan revolt, donor revolt on the Texas A&M side of things that they didn't want Mark Stoops to be their next coach. And all of a sudden you started seeing stuff that, Mark Stoops is not going to Texas A&M. And I really think that put Texas A&M in a desperate position. When you're an AD at that level with that rabid of a fan base, you cannot take too many situations like that where you have an offer out, you get a yes, and it turns into a no. I mean, that's how you wind up, to make the reference that I'm familiar with, given the other school that I cover. That's how you wind up flying out to California and getting called back by the president and saying, you're not allowed to offer the job to Mike Leach because you've been fired. If you catch the Tennessee reference of 6 years ago there. So that put I put on the board on Sunday morning that I still, at that point, it was Sunday 10 or 11 a.m., I still thought at that point it would not be Mike Elko for Texas A&M, but I was also a little weary because that became a desperate situation overnight. They wanted to have their hire locked in by the end of the weekend, and that turned them to Mike Elko. And so when you see things like Mike Elko told his team that he was planning on staying at Duke earlier in the week, when you go through the post-game presser and Mike has made it pretty clear. Like he's walked away from us and told us like, see you guys at the bowl game and that kind of thing. I think that the scenario was not in his head at that point that Texas A&M was going to offer him the job. So then it winds up that Texas A&M turned to him in their search and was able to offer him a raise of, I think, somewhere in the ballpark of $2.5 to $3 million a year. The salary pool, the salary pool for assistants is all like everybody just wants to make it out to be about how much money the coach is making. Well, it's that plus it's assistant coach bonus pool, it's facilities, it's the fact that you're going to a place that can put 100,000 people in the stands when you're not even that good. Like the fan support of Texas A&M is just, I don't think I'm hurting any feelings when I say it dwarfs the fan support of Duke football. And all that enters into a calculus, and it winds up being, he wants to go back to the place that he was the defensive coordinator for 4 years. One of the things that I said early when Texas A&M first paid the Jimbo buyout was, if anybody knows how close Texas A&M is to winning a national championship, and like if anybody knows how to maximize that program's potential to where it, the perception of it actually meets reality, it's going to be Mike. Like that, it's going to be the guy that just spent 4 years there. It's not going to be the guy coming from Kentucky. It's not going to be even like a Ryan Day or a Dabo. Like Mike Elko knows that program's potential more than anybody else in the country. So that's where you wind up here, and that's where Duke winds up looking for its second coach in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, and Texas A&M, as you said, able to do that. It's been a program that clearly has not been able or has not been afraid to spend the money. For folks that maybe not follow the Aggies so much, saw it broken down that Jimbo Fisher is going to be getting like $26,000 per day, kind of breaking down the buyout coming his way, which is just ludicrous to sort of sit there and try and compartmentalize over the next 8 years, $26,000 a day. Wow.
Nice work if you can get it, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt about that. All right, so let's pivot. Now it's Duke, and Duke's on the hot seat, so to speak. I want you to speak to this, Conor, but given this transfer portal that now it's December 1st, all right, here we go, we're going. There's got to be a sense of urgency in bringing in a new coach or promoting from within to let the players know exactly who's going to be leading charge. And then also reaching out to players that you want to have come join your program. So kind of where are we at with all of that, and how quickly does this need to kind of get ironed out and take place?
Yeah, so the interesting part of this is I think Duke's approach right now is basically be quick but don't hurry. One of the things Dave Clawson always says is it's in relation to position battles, which on a much smaller scale is kind of like hiring a coach. You don't want to be in a rush to make a bad decision. So I think Duke is taking its time. Like it's not, I'm not worried about Duke hiring a coach in the time that we recorded this to the time you're getting it out. If that gives you an idea of the time frame, I do think they'll have a coach by, I'd ballpark like Wednesday or Thursday is when we'll start hearing about finalists, or maybe they've zeroed in on a candidate. But that's not going to happen at any point like today, tomorrow. They want to have a thorough vetting. And one of the things that I saw, I think it was something from The Athletic. Duke is the most attractive job opening right now, right? Texas A&M is filled. Michigan State's filled. Like you start looking at the lists of things that are actually open right now, it's Duke, and then who I've kind of lost track of who else is even open at this point. But
James Madison has the coach going to Indiana, another Big Ten job that had been open. So yeah.
Syracuse just filled their opening, so you get it. Like Duke can. Time is on their side a little bit from that perspective. Time is not on their side from a roster management perspective, but I don't know if time is ever going to be on your side Like I don't know if your coach leaves at any point during the season or really at any point ever. I don't know if time is on your side from a roster management standpoint because of the timing of when Mike did it is a week before the transfer portal opens. But when your coach leaves, you can enter the portal early. So the players we've seen enter from Duke, I think all but one have been a grad transfer. But if 10 players wanted to enter without being graduate transfers yet, they could do that today because there's a 30-day window that opens when your coach leaves. So roster man, it's all just such a mess right now. This is why you're going to see more and more teams in college football hire general managers. I'm kind of been surprised that Mike didn't have a general manager. He had a general manager of recruiting. I guess that could have been in Derek Miller's repertoire.
Right.
But you're going to see a lot more college football teams hire general managers, and they're basically going to have the same job as an NFL general manager. Like, they're in charge of the roster. Because in addition to everything else that a head coach has to do, that's become their job now. It's just wild. I don't know how anybody can accurately forecast what teams like. We're gonna see these way too early top 25s come out, and it's like, how in the world do you know who's even going to be playing for these teams?
No doubt. Yeah, the urgency is picking up, and we still have the college football season currently to finish up, right? I think we're going to have some fun conference championship games this weekend set to be played, and there's going to be a lot of buzz about what quarterback just entered the transfer portal and that sort of thing. So, all right, we're running low on time here, but just as we do kind of wrap up today, Conor, tell me a little bit, tell the Duke fans out there, who are the names that are kind of trendy right now for this Duke head coaching job?
Jim Knowles is one that is obviously familiar with Duke. He's been at Ohio State and Oklahoma State the last few years after leaving Duke. I would have told you Kirk Cignetti was out there, but he's just taking the Indiana job. I like what Jason Candle has done at Toledo. Duke fans can watch him tomorrow in the MAC championship game on ESPN at noon. I think he's been in Ohio his whole career. So I don't know if he's looking to leave Ohio. And if he is, I don't know if he's looking to do it at a place like Duke. That's just, I don't know that. One name to look out for is Tony Gibson, the defensive coordinator at NC State. That'd be a short move for him, but he's done a great job with that defense the last 3 years. There's another, Manny Diaz would be one to keep an eye on too. Penn State defensive coordinator, former Miami coach. Kind of got a raw deal at Miami, like kind of got shuffled out of there with the new AD coming in, and they wanted to bring the prodigal son, Mario Cristobal, home. I think if he wants to be a head coach again, Duke would be a good spot for him to do it.
We'll see how it all plays out. It's going to be fun. And I know one thing for certain, all the best coverage around it is going to be over at duke.rivals.com. So, Conor, really do appreciate the time that you take joining us as frequently as you do. And thanks for the time today. We'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ. I appreciate it.
All right, be well. That's Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated joining us on today's show, and that's bringing us into the weekend. Best of luck to the Duke men's basketball team this weekend as they take on Georgia Tech. And then also we'll be following along with the latest updates around this Duke football head coaching search. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.